What are the biggest mistakes adults make when trying to discipline children? Discipline is tricky, so let's talk about some of the biggest missteps and how to avoid them. The first and biggest misstep that I see is when people confuse discipline with punishment. Punishment is one form of discipline, but discipline does not have to include punishments. Discipline is there to teach and guide, not just correct. Punishment is a lot about correction. Discipline is a lot about teaching the positive thing to do instead. People all the time tell me about the verse in the Bible that says, spare the rod and spoil the child. First off, spare the rod, spoil the child is a part of a verse, but it is not the whole verse. And here's the other side of that. The rod that is being spoken about in that Bible verse is a shepherd's staff. It's not a spanking stick. And a shepherd's staff was used to gently push and pull sheep so that they could get where they needed to go. It was not used to hit sheep with. As a matter of fact, if you hit a sheep, that sheep will run away and will not want anything to do with you. So people have taken this verse as spare the rod, spoil the child, and they've taken it to be like, well, see, this is why we need to hit kids. That is not what that verse was. That verse was saying we need to use what we can to guide children and direct them and correct them. But it was not meant to say, here's our reasoning for why it's okay to hit children. That should not be the case. But then talking about just discipline and punishment, many times people's first reaction when a child does something disruptive or shows a behavior that is just not one that you want them to show is to take something away or make their life miserable in some way. And it becomes like this back and forth exchange of, you did this to me, so now I'm going to do this back to you. You made me look silly, so now I'm going to do something to you. And it doesn't teach the child what to do instead. It just teaches them, hey, don't get caught for doing that thing. Or it teaches them, I'm not on your side. I'm not here to try to help you learn. I'm just here to punish you when you are out of line. Keep in mind that discipline is used to teach and to correct, and that doesn't always mean a punishment. Sometimes discipline is just a conversation. It's, hey, what was that about? It looked like you were upset, but then you did this thing, whatever it might be, and you just talk about it. That can be discipline. Why we have as a society believed that we always have to punish someone to help them learn a lesson is beyond me. But discipline is just guiding and just putting in place some things to help someone learn how to make better choices. Also, a big misstep is to ignore the why behind behaviors. If you ignore why someone did something, then you are really missing an opportunity for discipline. Many times people see a disruptive behavior, they go right to punishment, and they focus solely on the behavior, not the reason for the behavior. Just as a real world example, if someone got arrested for shoplifting, that is a criminal act. That is something that they should not have done. But then what if you come to find out that they were shoplifting because their child was starving and they needed to give that child some food? Now again, the law would still say that this is a criminal act and this is punishable. But once you bring into account that this person had a reason for doing that, that was a morally positive reason, it doesn't mean that that behavior is fully acceptable. But do you see how that changes how you might discipline that person? It could be that instead of just throwing them in prison, which people don't really go to prison for shoplifting a little bit of food. But instead of just throwing them into prison, maybe you can connect them to resources, and maybe they work off some of that debt of the thing that they stole. But in working, now they're also getting money to be able to pay for the things that they need. Do you see how that is discipline and the other is just punishment? And it takes into account the reason behind behaviors. If there's a child who pushes another child, let's just think about that. A child just pushes another child. That is a behavior that is typically unacceptable. But there could be different reasons why the child pushed the other child. Was it because that they felt threatened and so they shoved them? Was it because that child took a toy from them and so they shoved them? Was it because they were shoving that child out of the way of something that was coming to come and hurt them? And I know that sounds like a ridiculous example, but do you see how there can be different reasons for doing the same thing, and the way you respond is different based on the reason behind the behavior? That is how we need to approach discipline as well, is not just reacting to behaviors, but taking into account, okay, here's why they did that thing. Another misstep is not setting developmentally appropriate expectations for behaviors. I'll go into kindergarten classes and the teacher will get upset and punish children, or at least have discipline for children who don't just sit still and quiet for the entire day. Well, guess what? Children who are 5 years old should not be expected to sit still and quiet for the entire day. No matter what the written expectation is, that written expectation should change if it says that 5-year-old children need to sit still and be quiet for an entire school day. So keep in mind what is developmentally appropriate for children. And then the final misstep that I see is, again, from this punishment mindset, where it's just telling children what to not do instead of telling them what to do instead. There are times where children in my office have come in and they have hit me. Now, that's an unacceptable behavior. It's not something that they are allowed to do to me. But if I only say, don't hit me, then it doesn't tell them what to do with that impulse, with that behavioral need that they have at the time. So I say, I'm not for hitting, but you can hit the dummy over there. If you're at home, you can say, I'm not for hitting, but you can hit the couch cushion. I'm not for hitting, but you can go hit your bed. I'm not for hitting, but here, hit this pillow. You need to offer an alternative to the behavior so that they see there is an appropriate way to get this out. When you just say, no, don't, stop, then it tells the child, oh, well, there's no way to deal with this thing that is going on in my head. Offer an alternative, and that is really what discipline is helping shape them into making more positive choices. If it's just, oh, you got caught, so now here's your punishment, that doesn't teach the child what to do instead. Keep all those things in mind. Don't confuse discipline with punishment. Don't ignore the why behind the behaviors. Set developmentally appropriate expectations and make sure that you are introducing alternatives to the disruptive behaviors. If that gave you a new perspective, please like this video, share it with somebody that you know who it might be helpful to, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the fun tips and tricks here in our amazing community. Make sure that you like and subscribe. Thanks so much.